All right, so welcome back to Football Coaching Corner. Today I have Coach Patrick Taylor. He is the head coach for the North Surrey Greyhounds in Mount Airy, North Carolina. He is the chief writer for footballxos.com. He also has his own website, coachpatricktaylor.com. You can find him on Twitter at Patrick_Taylor4. Coach, thank you very much for coming on today.
Well, thank you guys for having me. It's definitely a humbling experience and a blessing to be on here.
Yeah, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day. So Coach and I today are probably going to talk mostly about assistant coaches, kind of developing what he's looking for out of assistant coaches, talking about some film breakdown things, but who knows, we might get a little off track and talk about some other things as well. So Coach, I don't know if you want to kind of start with your background maybe a little bit, how you got into football, how you got into football coaching, and then your journey to being the head coach you are today.
Of course, playing football in high school and transitioning, not playing in college. I went to college and just got a regular, I guess what you would say is 9-to-5 job, and reached out to a school in my area and started becoming a community coach. Basically, in my first year, I was working a regular job that let me adjust my hours so I could get off. I went in at 5:30 in the morning, got off at 3 so I could be at practice at 3:30. And after the first year, I came home and I kind of told my wife, I said, I'm going to go be a teacher so I can do this full time. And to take probably a 40 to 50% pay cut to be a teacher at that time from what I was already making with a wife and 2 kids. It was a big leap of faith. But I started coaching there in my hometown of Macon, Georgia. And I spent a few years there. And it kind of came to the point with my kids. I was like, I really want to move closer to my brother in North Carolina. And so we made the move to North Carolina, and I coached for 2 years at North Wilkes High School. And then I spent the last 10 at North Surrey. But, I didn't get into coaching necessarily the go to college, play in college, and then come out and coach or get a teaching certificate. I was a project manager to begin with. So my road to coaching was a little bit about I got away from sports following college, and then when I got into it, I started coaching football. I assisted JV basketball. I helped with anything I could do in baseball, and I just got the itch of being able to work with kids every day. That was more fulfillment than the money I was bringing home as a project manager.
No, I think that's an awesome story. I think we kind of share that a little bit too. I went to college for 4 years to get my physical education degree. Like you said, I played in high school, got away for it for a little bit in college, didn't play in college. And then the second I got out, I got my education job. I'm a phys ed teacher, which I'm very thankful for as a first year kid out of college, but wanted to jump right back into coaching. So I think we probably both shared some time as young assistant coaches on a staff, maybe a lot older than us. So now that maybe you've been around some coaching staffs for a while, you've been an assistant for a little while. What are some qualities, some strategies for young coaches that you think could lead to being successful down the road?
I think that, my first 4 years in my coaching career, I coached for 4 different head coaches. It was a revolving door at the time. And I think what I had to learn is, inside those 4 years, a new coach to come in with a new scheme offensively and defensively, which is not, that's not the recipe for success, turnover. But it made me have to adapt and adjust and overcome and be able to learn new personalities from a leadership standpoint and be able to work with them. Inside of that, also, even I became a head coach in 2007 and then went back to being an assistant coach. I think the biggest thing that I learned is in order to be a head coach, you have to be a really good assistant football coach. Because you have to be able to recognize the duties that need to be done, and be willing to do them without being told. To see the problem, assess the situation, and get it done. I think that's one of the things that you have to be. And I'll say this from sitting in the assistant coach's chair and being a head football coach then and now. Allowing your head coaches to bring something to the table, whatever it may be they have. If they're great at paint, and I know this sounds country, if they're great at painting a football field and teaching how to punt, that's invaluable. As a head, as an assistant coach, I know one of the things that I kind of struggle is, thought that I could do it. I always wanted to know that if the time that I put in positions and stuff like that in my regular time, if it was being either not necessarily heard, but if it was being calculated, by the head coaches that I work for and stuff. And I think that that's how head coaches can help with their assistant coaches. But because assistant coaches and get into coaching, probably one of the main things that you learn. This is not a Hollywood movie. We watch a lot of these Hollywood movies and we see coaches portrayed on film in great situations that make drama and triumph and defeat, and it's nothing like that. This is about dealing with kids and their problems on and off the field. And when I say problems, I mean a kid may come from you have 50 or 60 kids on a football team that come from a completely different dynamic, and getting them to come together and play together. You got a staff with 7, 8, 9, 10 coaches that come from a different dynamic, being able to recognize what they're doing and allow them to do it greatly. As an assistant coach, if it's not about developing the kids and assessing how to reach them, you're going to struggle, because X's and O's, I say anybody, a lot of people are great at X's and O's. A lot of times the disconnection is the relationship they build with the kid to get the best out of that individual for the team's goal.
No, I love what you said there about how everyone does come from a different dynamic for coaching styles, for coaches, for kids. I know where I teach and where I coach, we're the largest geographical district in New Hampshire. So we have some kids driving 40 minutes to school each way to practice each way. So what are some strategies you use to kind of get that buy-in, that group dynamic coming together from those 50, 60 kids coming from different backgrounds? What kind of strategies do you use? What activities maybe?
One of the things that we've kind of done in the past at North Surrey is we'll take a 1-day trip with all the varsity players to. We took an overnight camping trip before. We've taken them to a water park. You would not believe how many kids have never been to a water park, and not only are you getting them together in a team aspect, but you're also getting them together in an experience that many of them's never had before. And for the ones that's been to a water park, they get a chance to kind of, I get to say, peer coach about, hey, this is what you can expect. This is what's fun. And, it teaches them to kind of trust each other. You'll see them, some of them might want to get on the big slide, and you see them talking them into getting on the big slide and overcoming their fears. There's a lot to be said about that stuff. So any kind of activity and even if you want to go that far, I think the biggest thing in creating a team aspect about it is we talk about, I don't know if anybody's been watching The Last Dance about the Chicago Bulls. I grew up in that era and the time, and I got to see that team play. And I thought the best episode was episode 4 this last Sunday night. They talked about hiring Phil Jackson. Mm-hmm. And here Phil Jackson took over a team that already had probably the greatest player that's ever played basketball. And he had won all these awards, the MVP, the offense, defensive player of the year. He'd won everything but a championship. Mm-hmm. And he comes in and installs a triangle offense, and he has to tell the best player in the league, it's not about you. You're not going to win a championship if it's about you. And this offense has to get different people touches in order to let you still get your points and everything that you get, but the guys around you have to be as good or as reliable, and you're still going to get yours. But we're never going to win a championship just putting you in isolation. And that jumped out to me as a coach, because I think a lot of times when we talk about getting a team together, every team has got a stud. Every team's got their best player. Whether it's the best player on your team, the best player in the area, the state, whatever. People can defend and take care of that. But what are the guys around him? What can they do? And what are you doing to make them better? So for us, like inside our offense, I really want as many different kids touching the ball as much as possible because it does create a team aspect. Now, I don't look at that and say we got to get this kid, we got to get this kid, but I am concerned about that because I want every kid to feel valued in the offense and defense. I want them to have a place, they know their niche, and I think that breeds team on the field when it counts more than anything. Is how are you using the players around your player in order to make the game and your strategy proficient, and that goes back to what we talked about assistant coaches making those different dynamics of kids and getting the best out of them and being able to use them in that framework.
Well, I actually have two things from what you just brought up there. One of them from The Last Dance, at least. I was watching. I thought episode 3 was actually pretty fascinating. I'm an O-line coach, and I love Dennis Rodman's attitude on the court. Obviously, off the court, he had some factors that might have led to some issues, but he was able to come in those doors into the Bulls facility and drop him right there, bust his ass, work harder than anybody out there. And then that led him to be to be that role player, but that was able to move up and help the Bulls there. I'm 23, so I wasn't able to watch them in their prime. But I want to develop an attitude for my O linemen of, we got to be Dennis Rodman. You're not going to be the guy you're not Michael Jordan on the front page, Duncan on the sports page. You five need to be grinding, working harder than everybody else out there so that they can have their spotlight. Like you said, everyone's got that one athlete, that one player, but they're not doing anything without the O line, without the other 10 guys on the field. They got to work together as a unit. And the other thing too, I know you're an air raid guy. We're a wing T team up in New Hampshire, or double wing. But with us, it's that same attitude of getting all your playmakers the ball, sharing it, spreading it. We only have 27 kids in our whole program, and we're trying to build that up. But getting those kids invested, getting the touches for them, spreading out so that a defense can't key in on one player, but they got to defend the whole field. So I was reading up a little bit about you, and you become an air raid guy. As you said, in college you were watching Hal Mum coming over as a new coach for Kentucky. I actually just started reading Swing Your Sword by Mike Leach as well, so I definitely kind of love the ideas he's got going. But was that watching that in college kind of what made you fall in love with the air raid, or was that kind of developed through your years of coaching?
It did. Coach Mummy had been at Valdosta State before making the jump to Division I, and being in Middle Georgia, you heard a lot about this guy in South Georgia that's throwing the football, because at that time in Georgia, nobody threw the football. And when he went to Kentucky, I was born in Kentucky, and I am a Wildcat fan. And I knew, I talk about this all the time, but I knew what he had recruiting wise, and from the recruiting standpoint. And for him to go out and compete with teams that had the 5-star blue bloods of the Southeastern Conference, I saw it as an equalizer, much like the wing T and the triple option is. I've always felt like that if you play a wing T, double wing team, or a triple option team, if they're even talent wise, they're probably better because their scheme is so adaptable to everything you see. And yeah, I did. I remember jumping off the couch in my college dormitory and saying, if I ever become a coach, this is what I would do, because it made so much sense. And 20 years, 20 some years later of studying it and whatnot, when I got my shot, we were a wing T team when I started coaching. And that's the first thing that I learned. Our run game is still a lot of wing T run game. But the passing game was pure air raid because of the simplicity and the repetitions that you can get, and being able to use a lot of if-then principles. That really kind of scaffolded in my learning of the wing T of the if-then, and then being able to take that into the passing game was a different thing. But yes, I mean, I think that was probably the hallmark part of me jumping off the couch and saying, this is what I want to do. One, as a fan of the school, but two, okay, he's beat Alabama for the first time in 75 years at that university. And he's, LSU, and, we took a great Steve Spurrier team to the brink many times. And so that kind of said, yeah, this could, there's something to this, there's something in the matter. And and I've been studying it for 20 years since.
Now, do you find that you have kids kind of buying in more to your program and kind of that culture of the air raid too? I know, it's a lot more flashy, a lot more exciting, a lot more pro style than someone just going to run it up for 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Do you find that style kind of helps the kids buy in a little bit more?
I do. I think it's going to attract more different bodies of kids. I think the basketball player and maybe the athletic baseball player can buy in a little more. I do think there's too much stock put into that, though, Coach. I think it goes back to the assistant coaches and your staff. If you can win the hallways, and what I mean by win the hallways, if you can create a 10-minute conversation with a kid over 2-week, 3-week time, and you really get to know them and their likes and what makes them tick, and you develop a relationship with them, I don't think it really matters what offense and defense you run. I still think the relationship is, if they know that you've got their best interest at heart and you do genuinely care about them, I think you could ask them to run anything, and they want to be because then they want to be a part of what you're doing. In Georgia, when I took over that team, yes, I got some kids out that I coached JV basketball, and they ran cross country, and they done stuff that they wouldn't play football in the past because there wasn't a lot of position for 6'2" power forward that didn't really want to play offensive line or defensive line, but he could catch a ball and he could get up high. So yes, I do think that the receivers, you're going to get the receivers out, those type of kids out, but I do think that sometimes we put too much stock on the spread. We'll get more kids out. I think that relationships get the kids out, and get them bought into what you're doing.
Well, now, and that was going to be my last point too, actually, and just kind of bringing up, talking about building those relationships and, like you said, winning the hallways, trying to recruit more kids out for the program. I know for us, one of our issues, having 27 kids combined for varsity in a JV program, we got a good group of young kids, but keeping them involved, getting them some play time on the varsity level, but also trying to get their friends out. We got to communicate better with the 8th grade program, with the 7th grade program, and try to foster that relationship all the way through. Do you have any other strategies you kind of use to help recruit kids? I mean, I know you said winning the hallways, but are there some other things you do around the school, or that maybe your players do to help get those numbers up year to year?
I do think the players are your number one are your number one selling card, because if they're talking about they're having fun at practice, if they're enjoying practice and they can see growth and movement, I think that they help more so than maybe a coach saying, "Hey, man, why don't you come play football?" That's kind of a cold call statement that a lot of coaches make when they first meet a kid. It works sometimes, but sometimes, more than not, no. Some other things I do, I make sure in the school system, in the daily, I'm in the lunchroom, like during breakfast break. I'm up in the main course where people walk through every day, and you're able to catch those kids, like your players walking with other guys that do not play. And it just helps you build relationships with those. If they ask you to do something, kind of out of character at a pep rally or a student meeting in a gym or something, don't be scared to do that, because sometimes, that gives you an end to a door that helps you get those kids out. So that's probably the thing. I don't branch out into a lot of other stuff because I want to get the relationship at the foundational level first, and kind of win that part and then kind of draw the kids in.
No, I think that's awesome. So, Coach, I don't know if you've seen a couple of the other talks we've done, but one of the things I want to end with all of our coaches is kind of our 3 tips, kind of your 3 biggest tips for these different kind of scenarios. So my first question would be, what is kind of your biggest tip for a younger coach, somebody who maybe is in their first, second year, or somebody who's looking to get into coaching? What would be your tip for them?
My biggest tip would be, especially if you're a young assistant coach, concentrate where you are. There are a lot of opportunities now to go and coach at different places, and jobs are posted everywhere. Coach where you are and be the best at what you're being asked to do. Whether you're a special teams guy, whether you're asked to coach running backs, whatever, make yourself the best at coaching that you can be. Your product is on the field every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and that's what people see as your finished product as a coach. And coaches know that, kids are talented at different levels, but if they're fundamentally sound in what they do, then that says a lot about your coaching. Also embrace the stuff off the field. One of the things, Coach, that I talk about to a lot of people is I never painted a football field until I moved to North Carolina. In Georgia, everything's painted for you and taken care of. So the first time I kind of walked out to paint a field, I was like, what? We paint fields? Because it was not something I was accustomed to, and I wasn't above it, but it was just something that I hadn't factored into my weekly grind. That's one of the things that you have to look at is the washing the laundry, the painting the fields, the hanging up the uniforms, mowing the grass, all that stuff that has nothing to do with a ball, but has everything to do with running a program and being a part of a program. One of the other things I'll say about assistant coach, find your identity. Don't try to be someone you're not. There's going to be some coaches that are very in your face kind of coaches, and there's going to be some that's more of a laid back teacher type. There's going to be motivational coaches. There's going to be teacher coaches, and that's fine because staffs need both. We call it good cop, bad cop. Sometimes we call it staffs need all kind of personalities in order to work. So, don't emulate somebody, be the best original version of yourself and, find ways to better your craft each year. With this coronavirus going on, there's hundreds of, clinics and things going on with college coaches and high school coaches. There's a ton of ways to get better. Probably another way with all that going on, though, is be able to take in the information you're getting, boil it down to what fits inside your program, file the rest for a later transition in coaching, and take those tidbits and work them into, your deficiencies. And never be scared to ask for help. I think assistant coaches sometimes, as an assistant coach, you're scared to ask another coach on your staff or someone that you does something kind of like you do. Reach out to them and talk to them. We all have to learn and do, and I'm still a continual learner because of that. I want to keep continuing refining the process as much as I can. And as an assistant coach, you're slowly building a virtual resume for whatever your goal, your end goal is in this career. From that standpoint.
I think I love all that. No, one of the things I got from I talked with Coach Chad Brain. I don't know if you guys follow each other on Twitter. And his biggest thing was treat every day like it's an interview for a coach.
Yeah.
And I love that. So my next tip, what would be your biggest tip for players? A lot of times we say things to players go in one ear out the next. But if you could get into the head of your player and get one thing to stick in there, what would that be?
Enjoy the game. Enjoy the process. Enjoy the years that you have to play. College is not granted, and it's not something that's achievable. We all know the percentage of kids that go on to play at the next level. And I'll say this about kids: recruiting is a major process in a kid's life, and I think that they're recruiting kids even younger now than they were 10 years ago, and it is important. But understand the fact that there is a team aspect that is important. And just like an assistant coach, every day that you go out and you practice and you play, it's an interview. It's an interview for what you're going to do and how you're going to be, for whatever your end goal is, and enjoy that, but understand that you're a piece of 10 other working parts. How are you making the kids better around you, and how are you accepting coaching from other peers or coaches? A lot of times we get to that point with kids, like we talked about, whether you have your best kid or whatnot. I think that understanding that you're a part of a team, and this is a team sport, goes a long way, and your work ethic is going to take you a lot farther. To be a college level athlete, you have to work harder and you have to work outside of the normal framework of a high school athlete to prepare yourself to play, at the next level.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat today. 93% of high school football players will not go to play on at any college level, D1, 2, or 3. So 93% of players are done after high school. A lot of the times you can get focused and sucked into that recruiting or the idea of playing at the next level. Like you said, you got to work harder than those 93%. And then go
ahead. Football is, we talk about it a lot. I was a 3-sport athlete in high school: football, basketball, baseball. And I loved all 3. But I will say this: football taught me more and prepared me more for life because of the tackling and the impact and meeting someone that could, put their hands on you and they could, not from a fighting standpoint, but you were going to suffer defeat. It could be, and I'm not talking about wins and losses on scoreboard. I'm talking about matchups. You were going to talk about someone that's stronger than you. It made you have to think and be a whole lot, more assertive in how your approach was going to be versus different situations. And I think that at the end of the day, for players, what can I learn out of this and reflect on in 20 years that's helped me become the end goal that I want to be? And how is this going to relate to life? And find that, is golden.
Well, I think football too. I like what you said there about, the physical aspect of it. If you play basketball or I played basketball and lacrosse, you can kind of get away with, not working as hard or, taking shortcuts here and there. But football, you take shortcuts and the guy lined up across from you who didn't take the shortcuts is going to win. And that threat of the physicality of it, the lessons translate to life. If you don't work harder than somebody, they're going to get the job over you, or they're going to make more money, or whatever it is to move up. Football, you see that early on, and I think that's why there is the fraternity of football players. You carry those messages throughout the rest of your life. So, Coach, the last thing I have here, what is one tip that you wish you heard when you started coaching or when you were a lot younger?
Learn to balance time. I'm a film junkie, and as I told you earlier, being a husband with a wife with 2 toddler girls when I started coaching. My youngest is graduating high school this year in May, and I have one in college. And, kind of when I look back, I would spend hours and hours, and this is going back before Huddle and when you had to pad every game that you were breaking down and then compile everything on an Excel spreadsheet. There's a lot faster ways to do things. And I'll promise you, I know there's a lot of the film companies that'll break stuff down for you. And sometimes, guys, that extra $500 is worth a ton, because if you're not having to type in everything, it gives you more time to watch the film and digest the film, and it gives you a little bit more time with your family. And at the end of the day, if you don't have your family in line about this whole life, because coaching is a career, but it is also a career that bleeds into your wife and kids. And if you don't have that in line, it's going to be tough. And there's a lot of coaches that leave the business because of it. There's a lot of marriages that get strained because of the business. Find your balance, and anything that saves you time is going to allow you to do things more efficiently and be there in the different hats we have to wear. We talk about people on cell phones. Be present where you are. There was a lot of times in many years I was watching film on the couch with everybody in the den. I wasn't necessarily present where I was. I was sitting there, but my mind was not present. So, there's a lot of sacrifices to coaching. There's a lot of things that I missed. And it was understood, but at the same time, looking back, I was like, I could have done this a whole lot easier if I would have said, this is how we're going to do it, and this is what we're going to do. So, manage your time and find ways to increase the time you have.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, thank you very much for coming on with me today. I appreciate your time. I wish you best of luck this coming season. I wish you and your family best health throughout this crazy time, and I hope we can stay in touch.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Coach. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you again. I'll talk to you later.